Welcome to Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters. I'm Michonne Boston.
And I'm Taquina Boston.
We're your hosts and real-life sisters who binge on historical drama.
We'll talk about films, fictional adaptations, and dramatic series as windows to the past and mirrors of the present.
So fill your teacup or mug with your favorite sip as we explore what's fact, what's fiction, and the so what on historical drama with the Boston Sisters. I'm Michonne Boston.
And I'm Taquina Boston. Welcome to Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters, where we talk about historical films and dramatic series as windows to the past and mirrors of the present. Listen to past episodes and sign up for our newsletter on our webpage at michonnebostongroup.com/Boston Sisters to stay up to date on new episodes and bonus content. In this podcast, we'll be talking with actress Pearl Mackie about the PBS Masterpiece miniseries Tom Jones. Pearl Mackie plays Honour Newton, the worldly wise, trusted maid of Sophia Western, in this four-part reimagining of Henry Fielding's comic novel, The History of Tom Jones, a Foundling, published in 1749.
Masterpiece's adaptation gives a new twist to the tale of Tom Jones, a young man who was abandoned as an infant and falls in love with a beautiful heiress, Sophia Western. Sully McLeod stars as Tom, with Sophie Wilde as Sophia, the object of his infatuation, and Hannah Waddingham plays the iconic seductress Lady Bellaston. The series brings mid-18th century England to life in all its passion and prejudice, luxury and loose morals. Pearl Mackie is a British actress who grew up in Brixton in South London. She earned her degree in drama from the University of Bristol and continued her studies at the Old Vic Theatre School. Pearl Mackie has performed extensively on stage. She made her professional acting debut in the 2011 production of The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. She's performed in stage productions of The Birthday Party, The Crucible, and will appear in the National Theatre's upcoming production of Grenfell in the Words of Survivors, Gillian Slovo's play based on testimonies from residents of London's Grenfell Tower tragedy. Pearl Mackie's television credits include Doctors, The Long Call, and animated series Best and Bester and Lord of the Flies. But she is best known for her role as Bill Potts, Doctor Who's first openly queer companion in the 12th Doctor Who British sci-fi time travel series. In addition to PBS Masterpiece's Tom Jones, Pearl Mackie can also be seen in the Netflix series The Diplomat. Welcome, Pearl, to Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that rather lovely introduction.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. So, Fielding's novel, 1749, Tom
Yes.
Jones, has been reimagined, and you got the call to play
Yeah,
Honour.
I did.
So,
Yeah.
Sophia Western's Lady's Maid. We're in the city, folks, so you're going to hear some motorcycles and some things, so bear with
I'm in the
us.
city too, so probably on my end as well.
Great. So we know what it's about.
We know what
But
it's like.
so when you got the call or the email about taking this role as Honour, how did you prepare to play Honour? How did you work with historical consultants? What were your thoughts about the role? And tell us about even the costuming you had to wear, the 18th century costuming, and how it
Yeah.
influenced.
I mean, yeah. When I first got the call, as you say, the novel has been reimagined. And the first thing for me was I was just asking about the casting of Sophia's character and sort of why they were going down the route of having myself as a Black woman playing her maid, and then discovered that Sophie is also a Black woman, and what they wanted to really do was kind of explore their dynamic together, and explore the kind of realities of what their lives would have been like, and Sophie sort of coming over from, well, I mean, firstly, what I really loved about it was that they didn't shy away from the fact that the realities of her being a Black mixed race woman during this time period. It says quite early on in the script that her mother was a slave and her father was a slave owner. So, do with that what you will. But for me, I really loved, firstly, that they weren't just having a Black maid to a white mistress. I thought that was quite important. And also, secondly, that they kind of explored the dynamic of, being like, just the practicalities of daily life for Sophia as a younger child, being like, well, most of her white aunt isn't equipped to do her hair, and I was kind of like, actually, yeah, you know
That
what I mean? I was kind of like,
yes,
oh,
that was perfect.
right? I was like, that reality, I was like, I really relate to that, as I'm sure you both can as well. And it made it really real for me. So, yeah, I mean, aside from, exploring those kind of dynamics of it within the sort of 18th century world, that was kind of what really drew me to it in the first place. But yeah, I mean, obviously, the Honour does play her maid, and for me, we didn't work with historical consultants as such. I mean, I think Gwyneth worked extensively with historical consultants in order to make the script as accurate as possible. But for us on set, we kind of we sort of explored the relationships quite a lot more, and sort of we kind of focused on those sort of elements. But in terms of playing Honor, because I mean, she basically had to sort of do everything. She'd be like mending holes in her dress, making Sophia's bed, throwing out her chamber pot, like all of the not very nice things. But then, does get to do all of the nicer things, like doing her hair and doing her makeup, and even taking her hair down after a day and that kind of thing. But for me, it was really important that she wasn't ever like still in any of the, especially the scenes where you see her kind of in the earlier episodes at home. I was like, she's busy. There's stuff for her to do.
Yeah.
Like, she is always, even if she's having a conversation. And another thing I really liked about with her was that she does have an opinion and a voice, and she isn't like scared to talk to Sophia about what she thinks. And I think that really speaks to their closeness. Even at the beginning, they definitely have a close dynamic that's established like quite early on. And I think throughout the series that it just progresses in a kind of in a beautiful way, I really think. But yeah, I was like, even throughout all these conversations and throughout the warnings that she's giving her about Tom, and throughout the her sort of grudgingly moving to the countryside and not liking it as much as she does about London than she does London. I was like, she's got stuff to do. She needs to be on the move constantly, or folding or dusting, or something. I was like, so yeah, I think that kind of really helped me access her character as sort of different to myself, or different to any kind of modern women that I've played, really. You asked about costumes as well. That I've never worn a corset before. Well, no, actually, that isn't true. I think I did we did
I
like
wore one to a wedding.
Oh, yeah? Did it have like the bones in it?
It had the bones, and it was because I knew I would be standing. I was a maid of honor, so I
Oh,
needed
nice.
something to keep my back straight.
Oh,
Yeah.
actually, that's quite clever. They are
Yeah.
actually quite useful when you're standing, aren't they?
Yes.
Yes.
Like, they
Yes.
sort of, yeah, they keep you up. And I mean, unless you're, but it's just when you want to sit down or eat or any of those things that, or just do any other kind of normal stuff that isn't standing, that, yeah, they can be difficult. And I like I said, I wore one for like a project that we did at drama school like ages ago. But that was an afternoon, and I was 20. So I was like, oh yeah, this is totally fine. And then, it comes to wearing one for 12 hours a day on set for a long time, where we're, walking around, and obviously Honour's carrying a lot of stuff, as I said before. And, when they're on the move, she's carrying all of their bags, and the dresses themselves are quite heavy. And like walking through,
Yes.
some of our amazing sets were outside, and, they have the kind of dirt on the ground, because there weren't any, paved roads around in those days. So, the dresses would kind of, the mud and the water would kind of seep up the dresses as the day went on. So they just kind of get heavier and heavier and heavier as the day progressed. And by the end, you're like, it's like they kind of like doubled in weight, which was kind of, yeah, I mean, you had to really keep your strength up. Like I really had to sort of make sure, on my days off, I was like, I need to rest and recuperate, but like B, you need to like be in the gym a little, just to make sure that, my core can like hold on to these dresses, because yeah, I mean, they were heavy.
Yeah.
And also being in a corset on a horse
Oh my.
is, yeah, it's something, I mean, I never really thought I'd experience, but I'm glad I did. I mean, I feel like each new experience is exciting and you can learn from it. But yeah, I mean, that was interesting. I mean, I feel like hats off to whoever is, whoever was playing the character in Bridgerton, who was like really riding that horse with a corset on. Like we were sort of just, it was a slow trot, so we were like, okay, it's not too bad on the back, it's not bouncing too much, but I mean, it's still. It's just, it's a whole different ball game. Like as I said before, sitting in a corset is like, this is kind of uncomfortable, but you can at least sort of position yourself, and you can be like, oh, okay, well, I can get myself to a position. I'm like, right, that feels good. And then, when you're on a horse, it's like the horse is like, oh yeah, it doesn't feel good for me, so I'm gonna keep going. And yeah, I mean, that was interesting, and at times a bit scary as well, because it was harder to kind of engage your core muscles and sort of engage the rest of your body whilst on the horse with the corset, because there's so many more restrictions. So yeah, I mean, it was definitely an experience.
Well, I want to get back to what you were saying about the relationship part, because
Mm.
in one of our earlier podcasts, one of our earliest podcasts, in fact, we were in conversation with the scholar and writer Emily Bernard about Nella Larsen's Harlem Renaissance novel Passing, that Netflix adapted
Oh,
to
great. Yeah, that was an
film.
amazing film. Yeah.
And there's a dynamic between the maid Zulina, and who's
Mm.
the housekeeper, and her employer, Irene. And
Mm-hmm.
they obviously have some issues.
Yes, yes, yes.
However, your relationship as Honor with Sophia, you guys are almost like besties. So, how much of that was scripted, and how much of that was how you and your co-actor
Mm.
decisions that you were making about how you wanted to play that relationship between these two women who are both, as you said, it's two Black women
Mm.
who've, come from London to this rural setting
Yeah,
and
yeah.
are, kind of like supports to each other, really.
Yeah, definitely. Um, that's a really interesting question, actually. I think a part of it was scripted, but part of it sort of Georgia and myself and Sophie um, sat down kind of before we started, and we kind of were like, I think this dynamic is really nice. It's nice that they're kind of each other's allies, and I like the sort of the closeness that they have, and the kind of the way in which their relationship progresses, that they really trust each other. And I think Honor definitely, steps in to sort of try and handle situations, especially when they go into that inn, and the women are like pretty racist. I think there's definitely a like there's a worldliness to Honour where she's like, okay, I kind of expected this, but obviously is very aware that Sophie has come from a completely different background to her. I keep calling her Sophie because they basically have the same name, but
Yeah.
I mostly mean Sophia, but
Right.
when I mean Sophie, I'll try and clarify that I mean actual Sophie rather than Sophia. But if I make the mistake, please forgive me. But yeah, so she's obviously much more worldly than Sophia and wants to protect her, but kind of, I think that the lovely thing about their relationship is sort of as it progresses, I think she realized that Sophia is a bit more grown up than she perhaps than she was when she started the journey, and perhaps their experiences have kind of allowed her this sort of coming of age. But also, I think she's really proud of the woman that she's become by the end, and I think in order to have those moments and to have the truth in that relationship and to really make that relationship kind of sing, and I was like, we need them to be close enough to be, to be a bit cross with one another and to be kind of like I don't know, we were kind of like, maybe it's not like besties as such. It's like a your older cousin that's really close to you, like that
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
sisterly dynamic, but that's started off on a kind of different relationship, sort of. But I was like, there's definitely something about them that feels really familial, in that way, and I loved that, and Sophie and I got on so well when we first met, and we still do. We're still really close, and I think that kind of added to it as well. But I think also, obviously, in comparison to what you were saying about passing, I think the reality of the situation, if we're looking at it from a more broader context, there could well have been resentment on Honour's part for
Sure.
Sophia and for the life that she
Yeah.
had. And maybe if we were looking at that and we were exploring more of those relationships within a story, then maybe that would have been the more interesting thing to pull out. But I think for us, we were like, this is two Black women in a period drama, and it's talking very much about them being Black women and the realities of their journey. I was like, I don't really like, neither of us really felt like we wanted to see them hating on each other.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
we didn't want other people to see that. I was like, I remember when I was a kid, and Sophie said the same as well. Like we both used to really love period dramas, but honestly, like I never thought that I would be in one because, I mean, until Bridgerton, which was obviously only a couple of years ago, I hadn't ever seen that, and I I really didn't want that to be some young Black girl's first experience of seeing two Black women in a period drama. I was like, I didn't want that representation to be what they thought it was like. And I wanted the friendship to sort of transcend their status. And I really think it does. And I think that representation was more important for us than what might necessarily have been the truth of the dynamic within a wider context.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a great choice to make too, given
Yeah,
the
thank you.
context of our own time. Yeah, for sure.
Yes, exactly as well, and yeah, for our own time as well. I think we, Black women, we have a hard time of it, and it's like I don't really hugely enjoy seeing Black women on screen hating on each other, trying to bring each other down, because I think it's a trope that is perpetuated by a lot of media and by a lot of the world. It's sort of as a way of kind of separating us, and I think that it's really important where we can to show those relationships. Obviously, we have to be truthful when we're showing representations, but I mean, the joy of this show is that it's a joyous show, and
Uh-huh.
I was like, I think there are so many people, like Lady Bellaston's trying to bring Sophia down, so it's like, I think we don't need to see the only two Black women in this period drama attacking one another.
Yeah, agreed.
And one scene I really enjoyed was when you two were in the inn and sharing the same bed and the thin walls. It took me back to
Oh
my
yeah.
college days.
Oh my gosh. I know, that is so funny, isn't it? And then, but
Yes.
I mean, and just as, and it's so funny, isn't it? And I mean, I think that's one of those scenes you can really see the difference between their knowledge and experiences. And I mean, it's hilarious. And she's like, "What is that?" It's like, okay, how are we gonna? Do I have to actually have this talk with you? But then luckily she's like, oh, okay, now I realize what it is. But it's, oh my gosh, that was such a funny scene and so much fun to film as well, because I think you know, in a show like this, those moments you can push them to be a little bit more ridiculous
Yes.
than they would be in, like, you know, in a serious drama. So we just had so much fun with that. We were like, let's just go for it. Yeah, it was really funny.
But it also brings into focus the question of Tom Jones and
Indeed.
his virtues,
Hmm.
which Honor just is not convinced yet.
No,
It
and I
takes a
mean, I
while.
think kind of rightfully so, you know.
Yeah.
I
But
mean, sorry, go on. You had more to ask.
but Sophia's relatives are more concerned about the fortune and his
Yes.
being the son of an unmarried woman. But Honor has her own standards, and she's trying to convince Sophia that you need to have some standards too. So what were Honor's standards, and how is she assessing Tom Jones's worthiness?
Well, I mean, interesting. I think, I think for Honor, she's like, look, you know, she's like, this is the first guy that you fall in love with. Yeah, he's cute, but like, I mean, he's not trying to, you know, he says he's in love with you, and then he's out and about rolling in the hay with other people. So I'm like, you know, I think in the yeah, I mean, he's not that bad, and it's not like he's like super manipulative or anything like that. But I think she is sort of saying, hey, like you can find someone who is like, oh, I love you, and then that therefore that means that I'm not going to go and sleep with a million other people. And I think that is, I mean, I think that's kind of a good way. That's a good standard to have, I would say. Um, you know, and I think, I don't know. I mean, I think thinking about it before, you know, I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's like, you know, but in these days, I mean, obviously people's sort of standards in terms of like sex really vary. You know, sometimes it's tied in with religion, sometimes it's tied in with lots of other things. Um, but like the sex before marriage thing was like you know, a very, very different thing in the 1800s. Um, so yeah, I think, I don't know. I think Honor's just being like, look, just be careful. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just be careful. Just be aware. I just want you to know that this is happening. Just in case you didn't know, and just in case you thought that he was like just, you know, at home pining after you every night. And maybe he is most nights, but some of the nights he ain't. So you know, just I think she just wants her to be aware and just kind of have the full kind of picture, so she's not going into it with her eyes closed. And also just to say to him, yo, like, let's just make sure that once the marriage happens that we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Good luck.
Yeah, well, I mean, right? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think he's sort of portrayed as like a lovable rogue, isn't he? And I think if they had reimagined it in a way of him not doing any of that, because they're kind of like, actually we do have different sort of values now, it wouldn't be true to the story.
Right,
And
yeah.
I think some of the comedy definitely comes from those moments. So I think without that, it's not, you're not telling the same story as of Tom Jones, though. You know, that I do like that they have Honor being like, yo, like, this is not okay. Let's just take a minute here and just be like, I just need you to know that this ain't all right. So don't allow him to treat you like that for the rest of your sort of engagement, the rest of your marriage, whatever. And I think she listens.
You've been enjoying Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters, a podcast where we talk about historical drama series and films as windows to the past and mirrors of the present.
Visit our webpage at michonnebostongroup.com/Boston Sisters. Share this podcast. Join our historical drama community by signing up for our newsletter to stay up to date on future episodes and bonus content.
Now, back to our podcast conversation. Pearl, you mentioned that you and Sophie, in looking at the relationship between Honour and Sophia, were conscious of what kind of dynamic you wanted to portray between these two Black women.
Mm.
And when we talked with Sharon D. Johnson, who's a script and story consultant for other Masterpiece series, and I think she was for this one as well, she mentioned that there were times when she made recommendations about what would make more cultural identity sense for a character like Georgiana Lamb, who also was a young woman whose father was a white plantation owner and her mother was an enslaved African woman. So, were there times when you and or Sophia made some recommendations, changes that you felt were more realistic in terms of the characters that you were portraying in the time period that they were living in?
That's a really interesting question, actually. I mean, I think that a lot of it a lot of it sort of was discussed quite a lot, sort of between us and Georgia and the producers and stuff. But I don't think there was anything kind of specifically that we were like, no, like this doesn't feel right. No, I think there was actually. I think there was one kind of moment when they're sort of talking in the when they've been when Honour's gone to so Sophie's come back to the pub that Honour's new husband, no spoilers, works in, and sort of presumably where she's now moved to and lives in very happily. And I think the conversation there wasn't in the earliest drafts of the script, if I remember rightly. We did film it a long time ago though, so forgive me if it's
a
not
couple of
all
years, right?
yeah, forgive me if it's not all completely accurate. But I think there was some stuff there's some stuff in that scene that we were like, I think we need the dynamic to be honest, and we need them both to not come across as stupid or naive, and I think some of that, again, forgive me, I think within that scene, that is where Honour's kind of like, yo, like this guy, what you know, like you need to understand that it's sort of, you know, he I think I'm losing my train of thought, but like she's like, he is I have complained about him before, and I've said you know, that he's sort of been gallivanting in the streets with other women, and I think sort of within that, I think there was kind of earlier drafts that were a bit more like she was a bit kind of more forgiving to him. And I think for us, we were like, I don't want to see like an older Black woman saying to a younger Black woman, it's okay for a guy to treat you like that.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, we sort of, you know, and I mean, you know, the team were really open to that, but I think for them, I don't think maybe not hadn't necessarily kind of come across as that way, because they're obviously like, you know, in sort of trying to create the whole story, they're also trying to not make Tom Jones look as bad from our modern lens as we're looking at it from the story that was written a very long time ago.
Yeah.
So I
it's
think
a different kind
like,
of double consciousness, right?
yes, exactly. I think that's exactly it. So we were kind of going, we totally understand that, and that's valid, and we want Tom Jones to kind of look better as well, so people feel happy and joyous about their union at the end,
Mm-hmm.
and that that you want Sophie to want him, but I was like, I don't feel like the I was just like, I feel like there should just be an element of caution within that, and I didn't just want, neither of us just wanted that conversation just to sort of go for Honor to just be like, no, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. He's actually fine. It kind of just didn't sit right. But this, it was an early draft. It was an early conversation. Everyone was really receptive, and really listened to us. So yeah, that was great. I mean, it's lovely when productions do listen to their actors and
Yeah.
to their actors' own sort of lived experiences, and the nuances that they might not have necessarily thought of at first.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Well, talking about
Mm.
listening to actors, here in the United States, there are certain roles that Black actresses have had reservations about taking. Maid is one of them,
Mm-hmm.
because of the history associated with that and what may
Yep.
be considered a stereotype of Black women in film and television.
Yeah.
And this brings us to Viola Davis, who was nominated for an Oscar for her role in the movie The Help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that movie was in 2011. And then years later, she expressed some regrets for not taking the part, but how it was scripted.
Mm.
And
Mm.
her quote from a New York Times interview is, and she says, I just felt that at the end of the day, that it wasn't the voices of the maids that were heard. Are there,
That's interesting.
yeah, are there similar concerns among Black actresses and other actresses of color in the UK about playing a maid or a lady's maid? And what advice would you give to actresses like yourself if offered an opportunity or a role as a maid in a film or series?
Great question. And I remember the film firstly, and I remember the script, and I also remember that article when Viola said that, and I remember uh, having a discussion about it with some of my friends, some of my Black female actress friends here, and also with friends and family, and stuff like that. I think for me that has always been quite close to the forefront of my mind in terms of some of the more stereotyped portrayals, going back to like Gone with the Wind, kind of those kind of things. I mean, I did my dissertation on the differences between Black the portrayals of Black women in American film and TV, and British film and TV, sort of contrasting throughout sort of different periods. So for me, it's always been something that I've been interested in, and something that I found. I feel like I don't think in the UK as such there are as many negative connotations surrounding that, but I also think that there have been less roles of that type within British film and television. And I also think but then I also think that's a negative thing as well within itself, because it's sort of there were just way less Black people on TV in Britain, and within film in the UK, historically, and it took a lot longer to even sort of allow those portrayals to exist. But that doesn't take away from the negative stereotypes that Black women were, kind of, well, I mean, I don't want to say forced to play, but they were the only options that they were given. So people are like, well, look, I want to be an actress. I'm trying to be an actress. I'm trying to get out.
Yes.
I'm trying to do things here. So obviously, there are roles that you're like, well, I don't necessarily want to do this, but that's sort of my only option, in whatever period X, Y, and Z historically. Um, I think for me, I definitely played some maid roles in theatre when I was younger. So Tituba in The Crucible, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that was in my final year production or at drama school. And there weren't many Black women in my year. In fact, there were only two of us, if I remember rightly. And Brislovic is much more diverse now, as I think a lot of other drama schools in Britain are, which is a good thing, but they should have been then as well. And so, yeah, I remember being quite angry about that casting then, and some other sort of similar kind of things that were none of these weren't sort of professional jobs, but I remember getting like asked. There were a couple of auditions for maid type roles quite early on in my career that I was like, I don't think I necessarily want to do that. That said, had they been higher profile, maybe I'd have considered it differently. But the fact of the matter was they weren't, and that's how I felt about it, and I felt quite strongly about it. And but just mainly because I feel like Viola's saying, if the roles that we're playing aren't changing the narrative, aren't pushing the needle, though those made specific roles, then they're kind of only perpetuating the stereotype, which is not something we should be out here doing. But 2011 was a different time. I graduated from drama school in 2010, so I guess that was kind of around the same sort of era. And I do think that roles and opportunities for Black actresses have changed exponentially during that time. You got like Gina Prince Blythewood making The Woman King, and
Yes.
incredible films. I mean, you've got like Chevalier that's just coming out. I mean,
Yes.
I'm like, this is
We
this is
saw.
the kind of thing, I'm like, a friend of mine is in that, and I'm like, this is amazing that we are able to do this now.
Absolutely.
And I don't know, I there within the maid kind of narrative, going back to that, I think with Honour, obviously it's not her story, so you're not really hearing her voice and her opinion all the time, but she does definitely have one within the story, and she definitely, there isn't a kind of, apart from until she sort of gets to Lady Bellaston's house, actually, and she is very dismissive of her, she does express herself, and she does have a journey, and she does actually get an amazing kind of slice of joy at the end of it. And for me, I think that helped me to understand, or helped me to kind of feel like the role was helping to push the narrative a little bit. She wasn't sidelined, she wasn't dismissed within the text. It wasn't like she was just here sort of bringing a cup of coffee here and there. She was a real person. And I think allowing our conversations between Georgia and Sophie and myself, I think really really allowed her to develop as a real person. And for me, that was key. It's like she wasn't a stereotype, she's a person. So I guess within that, my advice for anyone would be to like look for the humanity within any role, but also I would say, if it's not there, and if it's not supported from production, or if it's not supported from your director, I'm not saying must sort of everything must be supported and you must be, but there are within smaller roles there are sort of less opportunity for that freedom of conversation that I've talked about. But I do think, there is a humanity that you can bring to everything to a certain extent. And I think if there is no capacity for that because of the way that they are written, and they are written in a way that is them being sidelined, then I feel like you don't have to do it. That is what I would say.
Yeah, exercising choice for sure.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I feel like, trust your gut and talk to your people, talk to your team. And if your team aren't the right people to talk to about that, then talk to your family and talk to your friends and, see how they would feel externally watching it. And, I think that, I think most of the time, if you're really considering it, then you probably know the answer.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a difference between being a plot device and having a character arc and a narrative arc in a story.
Exactly. Yeah,
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 exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And,
You meant,
there are small parts where you are like, you can make something of that for sure,
yeah,
even if you
Oh
are
yeah, I've
sort
seen that happen. Someone came in and blew the whole thing up.
yeah,
You're like, who is
yeah, and that
that?
can totally happen. And like, I think that's amazing, But I do think, yeah, I think with the whole maid narrative, exercise caution and trust yourself and trust your own gut. And yeah, I think if it's not ticking the right boxes, then I think you're allowed to say no.
You said earlier, Pearl, that you hadn't seen yourself in historical dramas in the past. And it wasn't until, we're now seeing this is, you mentioned Chevalier, you mentioned Bridgerton. We also had Sanditon. We've got now Tom
Mm,
Jones.
The
There was
Woman
The
King.
Woman King. There was
yep.
Belle, some years
Yes, yes,
ago.
of course,
We
yes.
yeah, we talked to Gloria Sam Jolly, who's a UK artist and, art historian about that. Um, Talk a little bit about benefits you see in that kind of inclusive casting and storytelling in historical drama for audiences.
I mean, I think I think it's wild that we were ever excluded from those stories
Amen.
because right?
Yeah.
It's like we've always been here, and especially we've within London. I was saying the other day, I was like, Shakespeare wrote Othello in the 1500s, and he was not like, oh my god, like obviously there is only one black character in Othello, but we would we've been here for such a long time that it just feels very yeah, it feels crazy to me that it's taken this long for that representation to make it to the screen. um and I feel like having it there now, I think really, well, I think in a way kind of allows people to be like a little frustrated at how much it wasn't there before and how ridiculous that is as a concept, which I think there's time to be angry about that, and I don't think that's the wrong way to react to it. But I also think it allows us to kind of grab hold of our history in a different way to what has been perpetuated of us for such a long time, and I think it allows us to see ourselves in other positions and allows ourselves to not just see ourselves being persecuted, essentially.
Yes.
And I think that I'm all for that, and I think that is a really, really positive thing to pass on to the next generation, and even for us, who have lived through generations of not seeing ourselves within those roles. I think it's nice to suddenly be like, yes, we were there, and we can, even though we're here and they are there. It's getting a bit existential now, but like I feel like it's so great for us to be able to be like, yes, what I thought before was missing, I was right to think that was missing, and I feel really happy that that is now kind of coming full circle and allowing for ourselves to see ourselves in corsets on horses, to see ourselves like this. It's amazing. And I think that, yeah, I feel like this new development, I feel like long may it rain, and I hope that it continues to allow us to feel seen.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
definitely. Boy, I might do a series, Corsets on Horses.
Yeah, I think you should. I mean, you would have to wear a corset on a horse just to sort of, add to the experience. But look, I mean, I recommend it, just not for a long time.
Right.
So it's not just reimagining, we're now restoring.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Why not?
Yes.
Here we are, Pearl, at our what we call our lightning round, where we ask
Oh,
all our
yes.
guests 2 questions related to the themes of the podcast. Now, these questions may be a natural for you because you've been on Doctor Who.
Yeah. Maybe. I
Yeah.
have been asked about different time periods before, once or twice, but I'll
Okay.
try and
So,
keep it fresh,
okay, let's keep it fresh. So, what historical time period would you want to visit today, and why?
Okay. My usual go-to for this has been the 1960s. Though I think it's a really interesting time period to explore, and I think that there is a lot to unpack within that decade, and I also think it would have been very dangerous. So I don't sort of say that lightly, but I think that within the developments of the civil rights movement, I think there's so much power, and there is a lot of community, and I think that would be really interesting to explore. But I mean, to keep it fresh, I don't know, maybe like the medieval times. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
why. I feel like maybe I could fight with a broadsword.
You'd be one of the shield maidens
The
for
Shield
sure.
Maidens.
There you go. There you go. Exactly. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So our other question has to do with the time capsule because we're all historical beings ourselves. So if
Mhm.
you were to put 3 items into a capsule that reflect the time, your life and the times you've lived through, what 3 items would those be?
Okay. Um, I think the Spice Girls. I think like a Tamagotchi. Do you remember those? Did you guys have them? Did you call them
No.
that? Like do you remember the little creatures before mobile phones existed that you had to play on?
Oh,
They were on a
yeah.
keyring on your pocket and you had to
Oh
keep them
yeah,
around.
okay. I came
Yeah.
up in the Space
Yeah.
Invaders era.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I hear you. And I also think, I mean, all of these things are kind of very 2000s. But I think that was when I was like
That's
a young
history for
teenager. So
somebody.
I feel like those. Do you remember those blow up chairs?
Yes.
Yeah, they're like the big. I had a green one, and I wanted it so bad for so long, and then I realized that I mean, my mum bought it for me. Bless her. Thank you, mum. And it just didn't fit in my room. Didn't fit my room. So I blew it up once, and then I was like, right, I'm going to take that down. So, so yeah, I would like other people to experience that kind of blow up furniture, please.
Well, fortunately, when you take it down, it's easy to pack.
Right.
Yes, exactly. There's a lot of compartments though, different bits with the air, so you had to it did take a couple of us to kind of squish it down to flat, but we got there in the end.
Well, thank you, Pearl, for joining us on our podcast today to talk about Tom Jones for our
Thank you so
audience.
much.
Oh,
I've had
this has
such a
been
wonderful
great
time talking
fun.
to you. Thank
Yeah.
you. And your questions were like amazing. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Jones can be seen on PBS Masterpiece. Check local listings. You can stream the series on PBS Passport, the PBS Masterpiece Prime Video channel, and for free for 14 days from broadcast on pbs.org/masterpiece. Tom Jones is written by Gwyneth Hughes and directed by Georgia Paris. Tom Jones is a co-production between Mammoth Screen and Masterpiece.
We invite you to share this episode of Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters with someone you know who would enjoy the conversation. Subscribe to Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters and enjoy past episodes wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Visit our website at michonnebostongroup.com/Boston Sisters for more information and resources related to this and other podcast episodes.
Sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date on future episodes and bonus content. You can write us at podcast@michonnebostongroup.com. Like and share Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters on your social media.
This is Michonne Boston.
And this is Tequina Boston.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters, a podcast about historical films and series dramas. Visit our webpage at michonnebostongroup.com/Boston Sisters.
Tell us what historical dramas you're watching. Who knows? We may do a show about it. Sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the podcast, and share it with the people you know who binge on historical drama.
Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters is brought to you by the Michonne Boston Group. The views and opinions expressed on Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters are those of the speakers and do not represent the positions or views of the Michonne Boston Group, its clients, or affiliates. This is Michonne Boston.
And this is Tequina Boston. Thank you for listening.